tutors, mentors, and the city with your host.com.
The City Tutors presents
Tutors, mentors, and the city
with your host.com.
Morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Kevin.com Brown, and welcome to Tutors, Mentors, in the City. And like we do every episode, we're going to jump right in. Please join me in welcoming our guest for this episode, Mr. Andy Rich. Give it up for Andy, everybody. Yay! Andy, how are you?
I'm good. It's great to be with you. It's a true honor.
Yes, well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, first of all, Andy, is that short for Andrew?
It is. It is.
Okay.
Yes.
And typically that's how I can refer to you as we speak?
Absolutely. I've always been Andy, honestly. There were times when I thought I should switch to Andrew. It's never stuck. So I've always been Andy.
Okay, so Andy Rich, who are you?
So I am the Dean of the Colin Powell School for Civic and Global Leadership here at City College, New York. And we're the largest student division of the college. We're the social sciences combined with leadership, public service, business, and finance and entrepreneurship programs at City College.
Now,
And yeah, go ahead.
No, go.
Yeah, and so I've been dean for 4 years, and I am a political scientist by training, and came to City College initially back in 2003 as an assistant professor, got tenure here, had the chance to be chair of our political science department, and I helped to create with our now president, Vince Boudreau, the Colin Powell Center, which was the precursor to what's now the Colin Powell School. And did that for a little while, but then I left City College actually for 10 years, and I helped to create a new think tank focused on national policymaking called the Roosevelt Institute, and ran a small federal agency in Washington called the Truman Scholarship Foundation, supports young people committed to public service. And 4 years ago, had the chance to come back here as dean and have had a wonderful time since.
Now that sounds very impressive. How does someone get there? Where does someone who gets there, where do they start? Where are your origins? If we rewind the clock all the way back.
Yeah. Well, so we talked about my grandfather. So my father is from New York City. He was the son of the father I mentioned, a guy whose family had come over from Poland, and a grandmother who was Italian Catholic. And they met in the Lower East Side, had my dad and had my aunt, who was his older sister. And my aunt actually went to City College, was the first in their family to come to City College. So it always kind of loomed large in our family history. My dad went to Brooklyn College. And then my dad went to graduate school out in Pittsburgh, and he met my mom there. My mom was from the Midwest, Missouri, and they got married. And long story short, they ended up in Delaware. And so I'm a kid from Delaware originally, grew up in Delaware, and found my way here from when I was in high school, late in high school, got really interested in politics, American politics, electoral politics. Started by being a volunteer on a Senate campaign in Delaware. A guy by the name of S.B. Wu was Lieutenant Governor of Delaware. He was running for the U.S. Senate. He would have been the first Chinese-American senator, Democrat, running against a guy by the name of Bill Roth. And I was a door-to-door canvasser for a summer before I started college, going around the neighborhoods of Wilmington and Newcastle County, Delaware, talking to voters and trying to make people into voters. And I kind of caught the bug for politics. And long story short, worked in a variety of roles in politics through my college years, and then was trying to think about what I wanted to do, kind of whether I wanted to work in politics, work directly in public service, or in some sense study it. And in the end, I had an interest in both. But I went off and got my PhD in political science, studying American politics, looking at how American politics works, and that led to the route that I described to getting here.
Okay. So you mentioned growing up in Delaware, and you mentioned junior high school. Prior to junior high school, did you go to public school, private school? What was that?
I grew up going to public school through the third grade, and then I went to a private school for a couple of years, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade, and then came back to public school in high school, Newark High School in Newark, Delaware.
Okay. So I didn't know there was a Newark in Delaware. Okay.
There is. We pronounce it differently. We say Newark, like two words, Newark, but we're very
Okay.
proud of that. But yeah, we always have been kind of in the shadow of Newark.
Yes. Okay. So what did that kid do for fun growing up? That little public school, private
Yeah, it's
school
a great
kid.
question. I was it won't surprise you, kind of a nerdy kid, very much into my studies, kind of quiet, and a little bit awkward. I was definitely into music, and I played violin, I played piano, I played trombone, and I was in the high school band, the high school marching band. That was kind of a big part of life. Um, and then I actually started working the minute I could. So I remember starting at like age 10 or 11, I started getting um, mowing lawns in our neighborhood and kind of accumulated a bunch of lawn mowing gigs. I got a paper route, then I got a double paper route. This is back in the days, when people would ride around on bikes and deliver newspapers. And so a lot of my time was eaten up on that. And I kind of thought, oh, I got to, I had a fair amount of privilege in life. I have to admit, my dad was a college professor, and so it wasn't anybody saying you got to go get a job. But somehow I was kind of drawn to it, and I liked the idea of the independence that came from it. So I did a lot of that. Went to work at Friendly's ice cream, if you remember that place,
Yes.
and did that for almost all my high school and into my college years, actually, when I'd come home from college, up until I started getting these internships to work in politics and public service.
Okay. So did you have any siblings growing up? Only child?
No, I have a sister, older sister. She's 15 months older. She has been a teacher. She just retired this past May, 30 years as a teacher, elementary school in Northern Virginia. And now she's going to be actually teaching and mentoring future teachers at a college in Virginia.
Now, growing up with an older sister, were you the bratty kid brother? Were you the kid brother she was proud to have around? How did that work?
That's a great question. Nobody asks about my growing up period. You'd have to ask her, right? I'm sure to her I was kind of bratty. No, we've been close. I think as kids we were really close in age, but we were very different temperamentally. I was nerdy, she was not. She was an extrovert, I was not. So she had a lot of friends. I felt like I didn't have as many. But I was kind of at peace with that, and we interestingly, we were 2 school years apart, and so we didn't really hang in the same crowds. And but we're close. We were close then. We're close now. But I think she would say she's pretty proud. I don't think I was too proud, but you can tell I had to pause. So you never know.
You never know. You never know. So you mentioned your music interest. Do you still play?
I don't. I still love enjoying, going to performances, but I haven't played. I still have a trombone, and it stays at my parents' house. So on holidays when I'm home, I might pick it up and try, and you realize, it doesn't actually stick with you. I can get, you gotta practice to make it work. So.
Yes. Now, can you still read music and such?
Yes, I can still read music. So again, at my folks' house, they have a piano, and I'm not good at all, but I can certainly read music. So it's fun. I think about at some point later in life, trying to pick it back up as a hobby. I think it would be a lot of fun.
Okay. So you ended up getting a PhD. So throughout your journey, were you identified as the smart kid, as the brilliant one in the neighborhood and such? Was that you?
I don't think that's right. No, I don't think so. It's funny. I grew up in a college town. Newark is where the University of Delaware is. My dad was a professor at the University of Delaware. So I kind of grew up with a bunch of all my friends were the kids of professors. And so there was definitely just none of this was stuff that I was really aware of at the time, but basically it was a lot of braininess going on around us. And we were all being strongly encouraged to work hard, study hard. It was very much a kind of part of life. But I wasn't, I did well in school, but I wasn't the standout student by any stretch. And in college, I did better, actually, interestingly. I think I kind of came into my own. I went down to the University of Richmond in Virginia. And so it was really important to me to get away from home for college. I kept coming back to do internships and work. But in college, I actually really learned, I remember in my freshman year, how to write. I can't tell you how important it was for me to realize that I could write and what it meant to practice writing and learning that. And I had a freshman composition teacher who took a real interest in me and thought I was a good writer, basically, and she hired me. Turned out she ran the writing center at the University of Richmond, and she hired me in my freshman year to be a tutor at the writing center. And it did a whole lot for like my self-esteem and my sense that like I could do this. And I did pretty well in college. And so then I feel like I did kind of probably look like kind of the smart kid, kind of, like I was, but not until I got to college.
And did you say where you went to college?
Yeah, University of Richmond in Virginia.
Yes. Okay.
Which was fun.
So that's not commutable, right? You have to
No.
stay in the dorms there.
Totally. No, I, in fact, I wanted to go away to college but I wanted not to go too far away. So that's 4 hours away from where I grew up. And it was the kind of perfect distance where it wasn't easy to come home. I wasn't tempted to come home every weekend. But I could get home, if anything came up. But yeah, I lived in a dorm. I had a dorm-based residential college experience for 4 years.
And in college, your undergrad major was political science?
It was political science, yeah.
Now, what does political science entail? What to the layperson? What does that do? What does that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So political science is the study of politics and how politics operates in our society, and looking for patterns of behaviors connected to politics. And as a discipline, I would say it takes seriously the importance of institutions as kind of mediators for human behavior and how we organize ourselves to try to achieve goals. And it takes really seriously the value of power, how power operates in institutional and non-institutional settings, and how power both can be accumulated to make change and how power can be challenged. Systems of power can be challenged. I don't think that's I don't know if I've done full justice to what political science is, but in a sense, it breaks into different subfields from there. But I think all of us are interested in how politics structure society in some fashion and the role that individual behavior intersects with power at institutions.
Okay, so studying political science, that, like politicians, to become a politician, you see a lot of lawyers, taking the political path. But typically any citizen can go into politics and be a political candidate. A political scientist, that's what we see on the TV shows as an operative, one of those people that work for campaigns and such.
No, by and large, if you want to go get a PhD in political science, you want to be a professor. That's where you would find most of us. Some of us, yes, particularly who study American politics, may have an interest in becoming political consultants or getting into the political space or getting into the public service space. If you're more interested in public policy, you may go work in government, in an administration. So for sure you can do that. But by and large, the PhD in political science is a research degree, and it's intended to prepare you for an academic career. When I worked for SBWoo, that story I told you about canvassing door to door, and when I went and got my PhD, I got the chance to work for a guy in Delaware named Tom Carper, who was our lone, Delaware is a small state. We only have one congressperson, one person representing us in the House of Representatives. He was that person then. And I worked for him at an internship right after my freshman year of college. And in the course of that, when I was working in his Wilmington, Delaware office and helping on constituent casework, one day the chief of staff asked me if the next day I'd be willing to drive the congressman downstate. Delaware's small, but it's 2 hours long. And I said, sure. And so the next morning I met the congressman at the foot of the federal building in Wilmington. He drove up in his car and I got in, started driving so he could be working. And he and I kind of hit it off. And long story short on this is that I took a semester off of school the next year to be his driver on his reelection campaign to Congress. And then 2 years later, as I was finishing college, he ran for governor and I was his driver when he ran for governor. And so I had all this kind of practical and really exciting kind of practical political experience. And through it, I got really interested in these questions about our democracy. Like, how does it work? Why doesn't it work better? Why don't more people participate? And that's what drove me when I was kind of thinking about graduate school. I thought about law school and I thought about getting like a master's degree in public policy. But in the end, I was interested in these bigger questions about American democracy and decided a PhD would be the right choice.
Okay, so I know you can go from bachelor's straight into a PhD program. A lot of people get a master's first. Which one did you do?
Yeah, I went straight into a PhD program. So I took a year off after college to work for this then Congressman Carper, who became Governor Carper. Um, and then I went to a PhD program. And in my PhD program, I got my PhD at Yale. And the first year, after you finish the first 7 courses in your first year, you were automatically granted an MA. And then you just kept going, basically. It took me 6 years to finish my PhD.
Okay. So going from Delaware to Richmond, not much of a shock, right? Not much of a cultural shock.
A little bit, Delaware is a border state and Richmond is the South. So it was a cultural shock for me. I had not lived in the South before. And it was a bit different, but I had a good time. It was interesting. I learned a lot.
Okay. And from Richmond to Connecticut.
Yeah.
How was that?
That was great. I have to tell you, I loved Connecticut. I loved New Haven. That experience, one of the features of New Haven, this was back in the 1990s, was I had never lived in a city quite like that. I mean, I'd been in Richmond, but in Richmond, I'd been on a college campus, so it's very cloistered. Here, I got the chance to, New Haven's not a huge city, but for me, it was a big enough city to feel like I could live independently and kind of explore restaurants, bars, and the whole thing. I had a great time in New Haven, and in grad school, I probably made some of the best friends I've ever had. To this day, I would say my best friends are the folks I got to know in graduate school, and I met my partner in graduate school, and we are still happily together. So,
well, great. That's kudos to you. So, okay, you finish grad school. You have a PhD. Do you have a path, or what did you putz around?
Yeah.
Like what was the
no? So in PhD programs, typically what happens is when once you finish your coursework, you develop an idea for a dissertation. And in political science, that means something that's almost the equivalent of a book. In some fields, it might be writing a series of articles. For us, it's like writing a book, most of the time, at least in political science. So I'd done that, and I wrote a dissertation about the proliferation of think tanks in American policymaking and how conservative think tanks have really shifted the terms of policy and public debate in this country in a conservative direction. This was in the 90s. They've done it on steroids since, frankly. And so you get to the end of that project and you're almost finished and you go on what's called the academic job market, basically. So it is a pretty well established pathway, honestly, that once a year, although it staggers over many months, universities that have need for new assistant professors advertise those jobs. And if you're finishing your dissertation, you apply to all of them, basically. And, the funny thing about academia is that colleges and universities are everywhere, right? You can't get excited about, I want to live in New York City or I want to live in San Francisco, or you have to, you can choose to do that, but you're really setting your sights narrowly. So I applied all over the country and I got a job. My first teaching job was at Wake Forest University down in North Carolina. And I spent 4 years there, had a great time, really enjoyed it, made good friends among my colleagues there. But it wasn't the kind of institution I wanted to be teaching at, honestly. It's a very private school with wealthy students who had already enjoyed a fair amount of privilege. And I'm a huge believer in public higher education. And I also very much wanted to be in New York. And my partner got a job in New York. And so in my, fourth year, I applied for this job here at City College. There was an assistant professor of public policy. And I got it, and the rest was history. But there's kind of a clearly defined path in academics, but it's also like incredibly stressful because whereas in some industries you've got lots of choices in New York City, for us it's like looking at the map and wondering, gosh, I wonder where I'm going to live.
Okay, so you land in New York City. What borough do you choose?
Chose Manhattan. My partner is at Queens College, teaches at Queens College in history. I'm here. And so we agreed on the Upper East Side, which is, one of the more affordable neighborhoods. And we've lived there for 20 years this year.
Okay. Big city Uh, Delaware kid in the big city now. What's that like?
It's a ton of fun, honestly. I think like I feel like New York has. My aunt lived here at the time, so the aunt that I mentioned way back who went to City College, she lived here. It's funny, she and my dad grew up here. The first opportunity, my dad got out. He had experienced some stuff as a young person. He's just like, a better life for me is outside New York City. My aunt loved New York City, and she was going to be here. And she was somebody she died a couple of years ago, actually, but she and I were incredibly close. And So she helped welcome me to the city. I had friends in the city who would come here. One of the things I love about New York City is you have friends who are in every possible industry. If you go live in a college town, New York College campus, all your friends, this was true for me at Wake Forest, all my friends were professors, right? Everybody worked at Wake Forest. In New York, I've got some friends here at City College, but I've got friends in every possible industry and every space of the city. It's a ton of fun, I got to say. It was fun. I got here in my late 20s, early 30s. Now I'm in my early 50s. I kind of love New York at every stage of life, honestly. It creates opportunities.
So the school was obviously City College. When I say the school, the City College was obviously different back then. What was it like? I was actually on campus yesterday, and this very attractive woman walked in. I was standing there talking to the security guard. A very attractive woman walked in and said, "I'm looking to register for a PhD program or something like that." And she was so attractive. She stunned me and the security guard. And I did something that I never do. I went and after me and the security guard finished talking, I went and I spoke to her. And just to pick her brain and see if I could possibly charm her in that 60 seconds of picking her brain. But with that, I was curious. I had told her how. I think we were standing in the administration building, and to go. I don't know if you've been in the administration building recently, sure. But you have to use the QR codes to with your phone to make an appointment while you sit and wait, and it's really quick. And I was telling her how when I went to school originally, that administration office was packed when you're trying to register for classes. And when I was a student, the line would literally go out of the building to the sidewalk and down the block to Shepherd Hall, right? And that was the first time I had thought about it.
Wow. When was that? Like, what year was that? That would have been.
Oh man, I came to City College in the 80s. I got there in 1980.
Yep.
And I was here from 80 to 88.
Okay.
And this is before the internet, before cell phones. So the schedule of classes was a magazine, and you have a number 2 pencil and you're trying to fill in the class and you wait on the line trying to get into the gym. And by the time you get to the gym, you could be standing online for an hour or 2.
Yeah.
By the time you get to the gym, to the table to see if that class is still available, see if they have any cards left. And if there's no more cards left, you have to basically recycle again. And you try to find a spot against the wall and change and put some class in so you could just at least complete your full-time schedule.
Yeah.
And I had told this young lady that just because she was very attractive and I get stupid for attractive women. So I'm telling her this, and her reaction was like stunned, right? Because if you haven't been there to see it, you can't even imagine what it was like. Now, I said that backstory to say, what was City College like when you first got here?
Yeah. So I got here 20 years after you got here, I guess, 2003.
Okay.
And it was a place that was, I think, just starting to hire again. One of the things that had happened was you'd had the financial meltdown of the city, that affected City College and CUNY in the 1970s. Then you had another one in the early 90s, and a whole series of challenges, I think, through the 90s, frankly, around enrollments and funding for CUNY. And when I got here, it felt like we were actually starting in a Renaissance period. We did a fair amount. I was one of two people hired in political science that year, and then we hired several more people, and I think they'd hired one the year before. So there was actually it was a good moment. I got to say, the campus, the buildings had not been invested in a long time. So I remember they were just starting to do a big renovation of Shepherd Hall, which was just not, the stonework and all was just not in a great shape. The lawn in front of Shepherd Hall wasn't a lawn yet. It was still, basically kind of dirt with some grass. So all that's gotten so much better. But there was an energy at that time, I got to say, that I feel like is very much here again now. But I would say now, some of the observations you made are so relevant, which is just technology has taken over in so many respects. So yeah, like the things about like sort of standing in lines, like all that's gone, right? So much of what students are doing is on their phones. And now we've got this kind of challenge that so much of the educational experience that students want to have is remote. It's online. We're in a kind of conversation about the future of the college and of higher ed more generally, about what's the modality, like how is it we're going to offer this? How much are we going to do in person? How much are we going to get students to come to this campus? And how much are we going to offer online and make available to them there? And that was a discussion, 20 years ago, we weren't even having that conversation in a meaningful way. And frankly, I think City College was kind of a laggard on that in many respects. And the pandemic has forced us to accelerate into a new era for higher ed, frankly.
Yes. Now, the program that you are did you say you're the dean of Colin Powell School?
I am. I'm the dean of the Colin Powell School.
Okay, so Colin Powell is one of City College's greatest achievements, greatest icons. Sadly passed away not too long ago. Did you get a chance? Of course you did, but did you get a chance to meet this man?
I did. I mean, more than just meet him, I got to work with him, and it was a true privilege and pleasure for my life, I got to say. What happened on this was General Powell was a 1958 graduate of City College. He, was a son of immigrants from Jamaica. He was born here in Harlem. He grew up in the South Bronx. And as he used to say, when it came to college, it was City College or nowhere. And he came to City College. I think he briefly, as is true for many students, briefly studied engineering. And then that didn't go so well. And so he moved over to geology. But the big thing for him was he found ROTC here. And that became his passion and his purpose and what he went on to do with his life. And, as I know, and as I bet your listeners know too, he was the first Black American to be chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, National Security Advisor, and Secretary of State. And when he was finishing his service to the country in 2004, a couple of years before that, we had created, with his permission, but not with his involvement, a center called the Colin Powell Center for Policy Studies. And it had kind of floundered a little bit, but finally found its purpose with Vince Boudreau, who's our president at City College. He was its director. And it became focused on student leadership development. And anyway, as General Powell finished his time as Secretary of State, he said, I want to come to campus and see what you're doing in my name. And so when he did, the president at that time put him in a room with the first generation of Colin Powell fellows, students that had his name in their fellowship. And he went around the room and had them tell their stories. And when he finished, when they finished, he said, my gosh, you were all just like I was at the time 50 years ago. And he, at that moment, recommitted himself to the college. And so he was the chairman of the board of the Colin Powell Center first. And then 10 years ago, we created the Colin Powell School, which is the social sciences at City College. And he was very involved day to day, helping to set some of the strategic direction, bringing his friends to the school, helping us raise crucial financial support for the school. And so for me, I got to know him initially back then. Then, as I mentioned, I left for 10 years, but I came back as dean and got to work with him for another couple of years before we lost him last year. And it was a true pleasure. I mean, he loved this place and he loved our students, and he believed deeply in the power of City College as an institution to be transformative in our society. We had done it for him, and his kind of imperative that he always kind of put to me was, Andy, get more of our students south of 59th Street. That's how he used to say it. That like basically we got to get them, like look at the corridors of power and all the industries, private sector, public service. Our students aren't in those spaces near enough. And so we need to do everything we can to prepare them to not only have the degrees, but also be able to take the jobs and take power in those industries to become leaders. And so it was, anyway, a great privilege to work with them. And he really, truly believed in this place, its power in our society.
Absolutely. And I never got a chance to meet him, but I saw similarities. I'm from the South Bronx, and I have, as a returning student, I always wanted to pick his brain on certain strategies. But you're my closest connection to him, so I'm gonna pick your brain. So as a grad student at CUNY, at City College, I believe in the pipeline, right? We all know about the prison pipeline, this thing that underprepares young people, particularly young men, particularly young Black men, that underprepares them, and their options are limited to they'll probably be incarcerated at by the age of whatever. So I look at City College, and I envision an educational pipeline, and I wonder about what the departments at City College are doing to recruit the young people, to make City College a destination for the community kids. Right. Yep. For the, like you said, the kids yep. above 59th Street.
Yep.
Once a person like General Colin Powell says, how do we, let's put the spotlight on the kids above 59th Street. What does that mean to you? What do you do to make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's absolutely right. I think we see ourselves as a college, as a community-based institution, a place that is embedded in place in Harlem and is of service to Harlem, to the neighborhoods around us, and to New York City. And frankly, as you know, City College has this wonderful and radical history as the first free academy in the United States, right? A place that was for everybody to get an outstanding education, and originally free, and still to this day, basically affordable, although not always so easily for everybody, and a place that would take folks who other colleges and universities wouldn't take. And so I've always thought we had a radical mission, a political mission from the start, and we still have it today. And one of the things we've done in the Colin Powell School that I'm really excited about is to put more investment and effort into connecting the dots for students between what they're studying and what they might do in their careers, and moving, as I think about it, the goalpost for our obligations earlier on the one hand. So from the moment a student gets admitted to the college, engage with them and with their families about what the college experience is going to look like. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60% of the students who come to the Colin Powell School are first in their families to go to college. So it's a feat for them to walk onto this campus. It also means that they don't know what to make of this place, right? Like, how do you navigate it? And so we've started a new first-year course that's focused on how to make the most of college, but the substantive frame of the course is the history of student power at City College. A lot of them don't know what the storied reputation of this place. They don't know who Colin Powell was. They didn't know he went here. So we tell the stories and we actually bring the alumni in to tell their own stories about the power that they've used to change our society, but also the power they use to change this campus. So, there's been movements for change at all different stages of our development over the last 40 years in this country, with protests on our campus, with efforts to change who can come here, what the investments are by the college in different fields. And so much of that's been led by students. So we want students from the moment they get here to know that this is all possible for them too, right? We kind of end the class with, well, what's the mark you want to leave 3-4 years from now? How do you want to leave this place different than you found it? And then we've put a whole bunch of programs in place that make sure students can have internships, that every internship they get is paid. If they're underpaid by the employer, we top it up so that students can afford to take it. And we make sure they have mentorship, including stuff that I think we've not ordinarily been all that good at, which is connecting our students to alumni who can help build out their professional networks and make sure they kind of get into the spaces they want to get into. It's exciting. It's exciting, but it's a challenging project. I got to say, our society does not make it easy for those who are underrepresented in every industry to knock through the door, get into positions, rise through the ranks, and get power and leadership roles. And so, but we do measure our success by how well we do in helping our students achieve those kinds of things.
So before you, and great answer, by the way, thank you. So you had mentioned you had left, you were at City College in one capacity as a professor.
Yeah.
Then you left for 10 years and then you came back.
Yeah.
What that 10 years? Tell me about that 10 years.
Yeah. So my academic work, as I mentioned before, had been about think tanks and how the right built this intellectual infrastructure among conservative think tanks. And so I had this idea that we needed a think tank on the left to kind of counter what conservatives were doing. And I got a chance, I was recruited to build that think tank in a sense at a place called the Roosevelt Institute, named for Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt. It was the organization, when I inherited it, was the nonprofit partner to the FDR Presidential Library up in Hyde Park, New York. And we moved it to New York City, new headquarters and a new mission focused on developing the voices and the power of progressives in a range of policy debates. And so I took it over in 2008. This was right when President Obama became president. And it was also right when we were experiencing the financial collapse and the housing crisis. So we focused on like what the right balance should be between the financial sector and the real economy, and between democracy and capitalism. We supported at the time Elizabeth Warren, who was a Harvard law professor. She had this idea for a consumer agency and she needed help on it. And so I knew her a bit and we worked together to support her, and did a lot of things around financial reform while I was there. And we also supported a network of student policy organizations across the country on college campuses where students were developing their ideas and their own voices to make change. So I did that for 3 years. It was kind of a dream. Like my analysis of the world was that we needed a progressive tank focused on reorienting the narrative away from limited government, limited notions of family, and unfettered free markets, and towards alternatives to that. And I think we've seen some of that happen. And then I got the chance to go run something called the Harry S. Truman Scholarship Foundation. I had been the recipient of a scholarship from this place when I was young. It's a small federal agency that is the official memorial to President Truman, but it supports young people from across the country who are committed to public service with scholarships. We pick them when they're in college and we support them in graduate school. And part of why I was so excited to go take that job was a belief that the problems in our politics and in our society are fairly profound, and that it's going to take a generation to fix them, and that the next generation is the right investment for me of time, energy, and so right aligned with that, when the opportunity came to come back to City College as Dean of the Colin Powell School, we've got 4,000 students, almost all of whom come from backgrounds that are underrepresented in the spaces where they should have power. And like, this is as exciting a project as anything I could see myself being involved in, honestly. And I really, I care about young people. I think our country needs their energy, their leadership, their ideas, and their ambition. And I think, when I look around at our student body, my basic view is like, look, if we can succeed in shifting power in their direction, the country will be a better place. So that's what made me come back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the Colin Powell School, it offers, you graduate with a B.
We got choices. Yeah, we're mainly an undergraduate institution, in that about, I'd say 3,500 of our 4,000 students are in undergraduate programs. The two biggest are psychology, which is the biggest major at City College, and you can get a BA or a BS in psychology, and economics and business. There's about 2,000 psychology majors and 1,000 economics and business majors at City College. It's the first and second biggest majors. They're both in the Colin Powell School. And then we're home to political science, sociology, anthropology, international studies, Latin American and Latino studies. So the kind of broad range of social sciences are here.
Okay, and are you guys introducing advanced degrees, or
We do have we have 6 graduate programs. We have 5 master's programs and 1 PhD program. We have masters in economics. We have a master's in public administration, which actually has a really interesting lens around social justice. We have a master's in international relations, and then we have 2 masters in psychology and a doctorate. So we have a general master's in psychology, a mental health counseling master's program, and a PhD in clinical psych. So pretty wide ranging options that give students choice.
Absolutely. Okay. That sounds very impressive. So, you in your journey, it sounds like you've interacted with a lot of distinguished people, on different levels. Who would you consider your mentors?
That's a great question. I have to say, I have had several folks. I will say a couple things. I've never had a ton of mentors, and I've thought about this because I am a mentor to many people. I love mentoring folks, and it's in so many of these jobs that I've had, it's almost built into it, and I love it, and I love staying in touch with people and really seeing how they succeed. And but I think I was shy, quiet, reserved. Like I learned from the young people I mentor how successful they are at engaging me. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. Why didn't I have the same, like, why didn't I try some of that stuff? Through graduate school, I had a couple of professors who mentored me, some of whom, the way they mentored me was to basically tell me I had bad ideas. I mean, they really I've always thought like some of the folks I most valued in my life are the ones who were willing to tell me when I was completely off track, or where they just thought I was making a bad decision. And I can think of a couple of people who did that early in life. And then I still have people in life, people who I check in with to kind of rebalance myself when I'm trying to get a reality check on what's going on around me. And I gotta say, I'm close to my parents, and my dad in particular is a real mentor. In a sense, I don't know if it's right to call a dad a mentor, but he's probably the person I go to for more advice than anybody else.
No, that's absolutely fair. Absolutely fair. Okay, so now I asked about the mentors because this is City Tutors. We have a volunteer tutor and volunteer mentorship program. But that being said, what is the best advice you ever received from a mentor, your dad, from someone in your journey?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it would be to think about how I like to spend my days. And it's a piece of advice I give now a lot, which is I think a lot of ambitious folks, people who want to make a difference, people who want to make money, whatever it might be, they think about the big goals that they have to be in or the jobs they have to be in. And they often don't think enough about how they have to spend their day. Like in the end, you got to get up in the morning, you got to go do something. And do you like spending time with people? Do you like to be alone? Do you like to write and research? Do you like to talk? Do you like to, work in a team where you're closely involved with others, or do you want to be left alone? And whether you've had a good day or a bad day is often tied to just simply like the dynamics of all of that stuff. And somebody once kind of encouraged me to think about that and to make some decisions for myself about what suits me. And it served me really well, I have to say, in figuring out how to navigate choices, particularly in jobs.
Okay, and you said you give this advice, or the same advice that you receive. But that being said, I'm gonna nudge you to give a different response on this one. So I asked you what was the best advice you received.
Yeah.
What's the best advice you have to offer?
That's it. First off, I would say it does depend who you're talking to. And, I believe a lot of mentoring is listening. It's not, I don't have ready-made advice that is perfect for every person I talk to. And I really do think being a good mentor is being a good listener. That said, I think for young folks, I don't want this to sound trite, but but I think believing in themselves, like so often it's kind of some variation of them not having the confidence that they can achieve what I see right in front of me. I'm like, you got it. You can totally do this. And so it's amazing that the negotiation, I guess I go in, you can approach it in lots of different ways, but to help them see what I see in them, their potential and their potential to make change, to do good, to get the job, whatever it is they might be seeking. The other is to always encourage folks to hold on to their values. I think that know what you believe in, know what you believe into your core, and then don't let opportunities kind of shake you loose from those things. Right? Sometimes it could be a financially remunerative opportunity, something that's going to make you richer. It could be something that people from the outside will see you getting that will impress them. But like, if it isn't true to who you are and what your values are, be careful. And that's always, a fun conversation, I guess. And a third thing, I guess, is to stay ambitious. That like people, it's easy to sort of think that the problems in the world are too big for you to make a difference. It isn't true. And there's just so many ways that as long as you hold on to that ambition, that the ambition shouldn't just be for yourself, but for some kind of larger change you want to affect in our world, you can make a difference over time.
Okay. Great advice. Now that being said, I took you on a journey. We went to your humble beginnings. We went to you to your dad and grandparents and such, up to now. Is there anything we left out?
What did we leave out? You know what? I guess the one thing we left out that I didn't mention that was an important part of my journey and that I think has played an important part in who I am is I'm gay, and I came out. I think the whole experience for me and my generation of coming to terms with being gay, I was one generation beyond the AIDS pandemic and a generation of gay men who basically died of HIV/AIDS, and it loomed large in my early adolescence. And then when I went to college, I had a great experience. As I mentioned, I did well, but I didn't come out. I didn't come out till I went to New Haven in graduate school, and I met my partner there. And so one of the things that I'm incredibly attuned to is making sure that every person feels comfortable with who they are and feels supported in who they are. And that one of the big things I've been excited to do at City College is be part of a whole effort to create an LGBTQ student center here, and to give it visibility. Most of our students are commuter students. Many of them haven't had the chance to come out, and coming to college is the place where they get to do that. And so, you can provide all the kind of tutoring support, mentorship support, but like, if you can't be true to who you are and find your truth, you're often in a whole lot of pain. And if that pain is at home, then you have to be able to experience the joys of life here. And so for me, that's a huge part of my identity. It's also just an important part of what I think we can do at City College. And I guess I hadn't talked about that, so I'll add that as we finish.
Okay. Let me unpack that for a second. I'm not going to hold you. So the student center, the LGBTQ student center, is that by in the NAC building by the ballroom?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So I've walked by there. I have this thing as a student who came to City College 40 years ago. And remember when the NAC building was built, and I told you some of my stories. But I've walked by that space several times going into the ballroom. So when I'm now the president of the grad student council. So they call it executive chair. So once I took this position, I walk into random offices and go in and introduce myself. So I walked as soon as I got announced. The day I got announced, I got the email that I got this office position. I was coming out of the ballroom and I stepped inside that center that we're talking about. Introduced myself to the young man sitting behind the counter. And I said to him, I've walked by this place 30 times and never came in. And I expressed to him, I'm going to share this with you now. I don't know what you'll do with it, but I said, a lot of spaces at City College don't give off a welcoming energy. Like they look so prestigious or unapproachable, or if I walk in, I'm intruding type energy. And I said, the only reason I'm walking in today is because I just found out I'm, student government, and I'm, but I said to him, I don't see a sign in the front simply saying students are welcome, right? Everyone, students, you can come in. I didn't see that sign. And I said that to him. And I introduced myself, and he, we talked a little bit, and then I walked away, and he saw me later on, and he sort of ran up behind me, and he said, I put a sign up.
That's great. That's great.
And I so appreciated that, because those little things mean so much. Because when you're a student, I'm telling you, I'm not gay, but I'm troubled, right? We all have troubles. You're gonna have troubles. You're gonna have troubles whether you're gay or whether you're straight, whether you're tall or whether you're short, whether you're fat or too skinny, or trying to find a meal or have too much food, or your health. Just the journey is troubling.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great story, and I'm glad he did that so quickly. And it has actually an amazingly welcoming space. Jake Nill is the director of that center. He's done an amazing job working with Jasmine Salcedo out of Student Affairs, and it is now. I don't know if you've been back by there, but it's decorated, and frankly, there's always students hanging out in it, and that makes me really happy. We also, I should mention, I'm up on the 6th floor of the NAC building, the Colin Powell School's kind of main office, and we are just opening a student center space up here with much the same. It's for everybody, and it's with much the same point in mind, though, that like to create welcoming spaces on a campus where often there aren't near enough, with open doors and places for students to hang out. It makes a big difference.
It absolutely does, and I appreciate the effort you've done to make your mark on the school and share your experiences and share your wisdom. That's what I hope to do. That's what I hope I can. I'm grooming myself. That's my ambition, to groom myself and pay it forward. I found some success in Hollywood, but it's not. They're not good people. There's a lot of bad actors in the Hollywood space, like the political space, right? Like politics. And you have to be a special individual to decide not to play the role that are so accessible, not to play the bad actor role in that journey. So I definitely appreciate you and your efforts coming back to City College, the school that I love so much, and the fact that you got a chance to meet and work with and work for General Powell. For me, it's like I remember the feeling I had when I met Muhammad Ali. Right, I was an adult. But when I met him, I turned into a baby. Like I was so in awe of this man. And he wasn't the young boxer anymore. He was, a little older. He was a little, but he did a magic trick. A crowd immediately formed. He did this magic trick. But I turned into literally a goo goo gaga child fan of this man. And just in my admiration and my awe of him. And like I said, I never got a chance to meet General Powell, but I feel his energy through speaking to you. I feel the channeling of that aura. And that being said, I appreciate the time that you spent with us on this interview. and your openness and your frankness in the conversation and your contribution to the school that I love so much. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for everything you're doing for City College and for our students and through City Tutors. So it's been a real pleasure. This was a fun conversation. I appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.